Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any stories full of mystery, suspense, and surprising revelations. And we want to know, where are you watching from? Comment below. Your participation is very important and makes all the difference so we can bring you even more incredible content. Billionaire Jackson Whitmore had a reputation for transforming forgotten properties into real estate masterpieces. When he spotted the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of Charleston, USA, he knew he couldn't let it pass. The house, built in the late 19th century, was shrouded in silence, its windows dusty and doors creaking at the slightest touch. But there was something in the shadows that stretched across the neglected garden, something that made the neighbors look away and whisper stories of disappearances and unexplained events. Ignoring the warnings, Jackson decided to invest in the restoration, convinced that every house had its value, as long as someone dared to uncover its secrets. On his very first visit, he noticed the contrast between the imposing facade and the dilapidated interior. The floor creaked under his footsteps, and the heavy air carried the odor of mold mixed with something older, almost metallic. An old family portrait hung crookedly on the entrance wall, seemingly watching him, its painted eyes following his every move. Jackson felt a pang of apprehension, but he remained composed. Years in business had taught him to master fear, to transform hesitation into strategy. As he walked through the empty corridors, he heard a crackling sound coming from the basement, a sound that seemed more like the deep breathing of the house itself than any ordinary noise. Curiosity mingled with unease, creating a tension that would accompany him throughout the initial inspection. In the following days, Jackson began mapping the mansion, recording every detail and planning the interventions. He hired engineers and architects, but maintained personal control over the decisions, determined to understand every corner of that forgotten place. However, each open door, each descended staircase seemed to reveal not only the physical structure, but invisible memories, echoes of the past. Old objects held secrets of interrupted lives, yellowed diaries indicated expectations and fears never fulfilled, and small water stains told stories of abandonment. The presence of the unknown made itself felt, footsteps that weren't his, doors that creaked for no reason, whispers that seemed to escape from the walls. While the team worked outside, restoring facades and gardens, Jackson dedicated himself to the basement. Access had been locked for decades, protected by a sturdy door and rusty locks. As he forced his way in, the smell of earth and dampness intensified, and the flashlight's light revealed walls covered in symbols, scratched with charcoal, incomprehensible but laden with disturbing meaning. He felt that what he was about to discover was not just a renovation, but a plunge into someone's, or many people's, obscure past. With each step, the darkness seemed to thicken, and the heavy silence gave the impression that the basement breathed along with him, aware of his presence. Upstairs, the workers spoke of strange noises, of shadows that seemed to move, but Jackson ignored these stories, concentrating on plans, blueprints, and calculations. However, one night during a solitary inspection, while examining the attic, he felt a draft of icy air and saw an object move in the distance, as if someone or something had run between the beams. There was no logical explanation, and this caused his confidence to mix with unease. He realized that the mansion would not give itself up easily, that its walls hid something that should not be found, and that the challenge surpassed any financial investment. It was a test of courage and resilience. Jackson began to notice a pattern in the strange occurrences. Each area of the mansion seemed to hold a memory, a moment of tension or violence. Small details, an overturned chair, a burn mark, a message scribbled on the wallpaper, formed a puzzle that no one else had been able to interpret. The mansion, in a way, reacted to his presence, as if it knew that someone was trying to reconstruct what had been interrupted. The mystery wasn't just historical, It was active, almost conscious. Each night, Jackson returned to the basement, exploring narrow corridors, spiral staircases, and hidden chambers, each step deepening the contrast between the wealth he possessed and the invisible power of that place forgotten by time. And then, deep within a secret room, he found an even older door, almost imperceptible beneath layers of dust and paint. Touching it, he felt a shiver run down his spine, as if an invisible presence were watching him, assessing his every move. A metallic sound echoed from within, soft but enough to make his heart race. The feeling that he was about to unearth something that would change everything, not just for him, but for the history of the mansion itself, filled his thoughts. Jackson Whitmore knew a decision needed to be made: open it, or let the secrets remain hidden, protected by time and silence. The Charleston mansion was not merely an old building, it was a reliquary of centuries of untold stories. Each corridor had its own scent, a blend of aged wood, damp stone, and the faint aroma of forgotten old books on crooked shelves. Jackson Whitmore dedicated himself to studying every detail of the property, aware that the architecture concealed clues about the lives of those who had lived there. Through broken stained glass windows, it was possible to see fragments of faded murals, scenes of parties and ceremonies from a time when the property teemed with energy and opulence. These visual memories served as a counterpoint to the current decay, showing how quickly power and wealth can disappear when neglected. To assist him, Jackson hired Claire Benton, a local historian specializing in historic buildings in South Carolina, and Marcus Flynn, a meticulous engineer with expertise in restoring old structures. Claire was fascinated by the mansion's past, and her research on the Whitmore family, Jackson's ancestors, revealed disturbing details: disappearances, mysterious accidents, and internal conflicts that had never been clarified. Marcus, on the other hand, was pragmatic and skeptical, but with each inspection of the basement and hidden chambers, disbelief gave way to apprehension. The trio formed a combination of ambition, knowledge, and logic, each contributing to unraveling the enigmas that the mansion had held for decades. As they explored the rooms, Claire noticed cultural and historical elements of the region: carved wooden panels with colonial symbols, marks left by enslaved workers, and imported European artifacts that evidenced the family's economic power. Jackson absorbed this information attentively, understanding that the mansion was not just a property, but a reflection of the decisions, mistakes, and secrets of past generations. Each discovery created a silent tension. It seemed as if the walls were warning of ancient dangers, as if they didn't want that knowledge to be revealed so easily. Secondary characters emerged around the story. The reclusive neighbor, Henry Caldwell, observed every movement from afar, murmuring about the horrors he had heard in his childhood and which he associated with the property. He became a constant shadow in Jackson's perception, a reminder that curiosity had consequences. On the other side, city employees working on renovations and transportation commented on stories about noises, doors that creaked on their own, and figures that discreetly passed through the corridors. These accounts, though superficial, created an atmosphere of palpable tension, mixing reality and perception, keeping Jackson and his team constantly on alert. The mansion's past began to reveal itself in a fragmented way. Claire found old diaries belonging to family members, containing accounts of mistrust, rivalries, and violent events that never made it into the official records. One of them mentioned the existence of a secret basement that held a secret capable of changing the family's perception of themselves. Jackson began to understand that the antagonist was not just the decay of the house, but the historical weight that each wall carried, a legacy that resisted being revealed. Every step taken inside the mansion became a game of patience and attention, where the line between curiosity and danger narrowed. While the team worked, Jackson demonstrated his human side, revealing traits of his character that contrasted with his public image as a ruthless businessman. He worried about Claire and Marcus's safety, and on some occasions he read excerpts from the diaries aloud, trying to understand the motivations of the people who lived there. This more reflective side, however, never paralyzed his actions. On the contrary, it shaped his decisions, making him a multifaceted protagonist, someone capable of risking everything for knowledge, but attentive to the consequences of each choice. The mansion, as an antagonist, seemed to respond to their presence, transforming the environment into a living character, reacting to Jackson's curiosity and determination. As the days passed, the tension increased. Each historical discovery and each architectural detail contributed to the development of the main conflict. The truth hidden underground, a secret that could redefine the history of the Whitmore family and possibly Jackson's reputation as an investor. The mansion not only concealed objects and documents, it challenged the characters, testing their courage, patience, and ability to face the unknown. Past and present intertwined, and the charged atmosphere transformed each decision into an uncertain step, where the line between success and disaster proved tenuous. As the restoration work progressed, the mansion began to reveal a silent, almost conscious resistance to the efforts of Jackson and his team. Doors that had once been easy to open jammed inexplicably, beams creaked alarmingly, and small cracks appeared suddenly in the walls, as if they were a direct consequence of the billionaire's actions. Marcus began to question the structural integrity of some floors, suggesting additional reinforcements, but Jackson insisted on following the original plan. Every decision he made seemed to provoke a reaction from the house, as if the building were watching, testing his resolve. Claire then discovered a side passage in the basement, partially hidden by a fallen bookcase. The passage led to a smaller room, whose walls were covered in strange symbols and incomplete diagrams. Some symbols resembled ancient European inscriptions, while others seemed to have been drawn hastily, as if someone wanted to quickly conceal their presence. The discovery increased Marcus's unease, who now saw the mansion not only as a historical building, but as a living labyrinth, ready to punish any carelessness. Jackson, however, felt he was getting closer to understanding the essence of the mystery, even if it meant facing unseen dangers. The outside world also began to conspire against them. A mysterious fire broke out in part of the garden, with no apparent cause, and construction equipment inexplicably failed. Local residents began to avoid the mansion, and rumors of strange events spread rapidly through the town. Jackson received anonymous calls warning him to abandon the project, but these warnings only strengthened his resolve. He understood that he was dealing with forces far beyond his control, but he couldn't back down. A silent obsession was growing inside him, a need to confront and decipher the past before it slipped away again. While exploring the basement, Jackson and Claire found dusty old documents detailing transactions and contracts that indicated not only wealth, but also secrets of corruption, disappearances, and manipulation of people in positions of power. Each page read added complexity to the conflict. The mansion was not just a physical space with old stories, but a tangle of decisions, crimes, and cover-ups that were reflected in the walls and atmosphere of the place. Marcus, increasingly apprehensive, began to realize that Jackson's actions could trigger unforeseen consequences, both legal and personal. Tension between the characters also grew. Claire constantly questioned Jackson's decisions, suggesting they should respect the signs the house was giving. Marcus, more cautious, warned about structural risks and potential accidents, while Jackson insisted that the truth was worth any risk. This dynamic created an additional conflict. The difference between Jackson's stubborn courage and the prudence of the other two formed a triangle of divergent decisions, increasing the unpredictability of what could happen. Every choice made within the mansion reverberated, affecting not only the group, but the very atmosphere of the house. On one of the tensest days, Jackson went down to the basement at night, alone, to investigate a sound that resembled dragging footsteps. He found traces of old, stagnant water on the floor, but also inexplicable fingernail marks scratching the wood. The fear that something or someone was watching their every move became palpable. Returning to the upper floor, he found Marcus standing there, pale, his eyes fixed on a door that creaked on its own. The mansion showed signs of being alive in ways they didn't yet fully understand, placing increasing pressure on the team. Beyond the basement, subplots emerged connected to the city and the Whitmore family's past. Henry Caldwell, the reclusive neighbor, began appearing frequently, hinting that he knew more about the mansion's secrets than he wanted to reveal. His enigmatic and vague warnings made Jackson question the extent to which the family's history was linked to recent events. Claire, in turn, discovered old letters suggesting a web of lies involving influential people in the region, increasing the feeling that the past and present were intertwined in a threatening way. The climax of this development began to take shape when Jackson found an ancient key hidden inside a false wall. The object seemed simple, but it bore an inscription indicating that it would unlock something crucial to the truth the mansion held. Each character reacted differently. Marcus hesitated, fearing physical and legal consequences. Claire realized the historical and ethical gravity of the action. Jackson felt he was about to uncover the final secret, even without knowing exactly what he would find. The tension reached its peak, showing that the conflict was not only with the mansion, but also between choices, morality, and courage. With the ancient key in hand, Jackson realized that the basement held more than just documents and symbols. It was a labyrinth of interconnected secrets, where each door could reveal a new layer of the mansion's past and the Whitmore family's own history. The team realized that this was not just a physical exploration, but deciphering a historical plot of betrayals, disappearances, and hidden decisions. Each discovery seemed to trigger another clue, like pieces of a carefully hidden puzzle. The pressure increased with each passing day. Jackson felt that the longer they delayed, the greater the risk of losing the chance to fully understand what the mansion concealed. Meanwhile, the relationship between Jackson, Claire, and Marcus began to complicate. Claire, with her historical sensitivity, warned about the danger of handling ancient objects without understanding their context, while Marcus advocated for more rigorous structural and security measures. Jackson, obsessed with the truth, pressured them to keep up with his pace, creating small tensions that increased the complexity of their interactions. Each discussion, however restrained, reflected the central conflict, the desire to discover versus prudence in the face of the unknown. The silent mansion seemed to amplify these tensions, each creaking door and each moving shadow adding layers of psychological pressure on the protagonists. Henry Caldwell, the reclusive neighbor, began to reveal fragments of the Whitmore family's past, but in an enigmatic way. He spoke of nocturnal encounters, destroyed documents, and figures that no one else wanted to remember. His stories linked to events that had occurred in the basement, suggesting that the mansion had been the scene of life-changing decisions that had faded from public memory. Jackson and Claire began to record this information, understanding that they could not simply restore the building without considering the living history it carried. Each subplot added complexity. The past directly interfered with the actions of the present, creating a layered narrative where each action had immediate and future repercussions. While exploring a hidden chamber, they discovered records of a former Whitmore family associate who had disappeared without a trace. The notes indicated financial conflicts, veiled threats, and internal disputes involving manipulation and blackmail. This mystery added an unexpected dimension. It wasn't just about objects and symbols, but about crimes and decisions that reverberated to the present day. Jackson felt that each subplot, the old letters, the hidden documents, Caldwell's stories, functioned as an invisible thread, weaving a larger, denser narrative, intricately connecting past and present. Time pressure began to intensify when it was discovered that the city intended to send inspectors to assess the mansion's safety. Any delay or mistake could result in legal impediments, fines, and even a halt to the work. This urgency brought to the fore Jackson's ability to make quick decisions, as he had to balance the investigation of the subsoil with the progress of the visible restorations. Every choice became critical. Follow the steps of history or meet legal deadlines. Each action could potentially alter not only the progress of the work, but also the possibility of uncovering the secrets of the past. At the same time, small human interactions began to reveal unexpected emotional layers. Claire, confronted with the weight of the historical discoveries, questioned the boundary between curiosity and ethical responsibility. Marcus, usually pragmatic, showed vulnerability upon realizing that dealing with the mansion involved risks that went beyond technical calculations. Jackson, in turn, demonstrated resilience, but also a silent obsession with what was about to be discovered. These complex interactions added emotional depth to the narrative, making the plot richer and more unpredictable. The tension in the story reached its peak when Jackson decided to use the old key to open a secret door in the basement. The anticipation was palpable. Each step echoed off the damp walls. The heavy air seemed to compress the space, and even the subtlest sounds, the creaking of a beam, the falling dust, created suspense. The hidden chamber revealed not only documents, but personal belongings of former residents, clues to disappearances, and marks of confrontations that no one had recorded. The historical subplot, the conflicts between the characters, and the mysteries of the mansion converged at that moment, preparing the ground for the turning point that would definitively transform the narrative. When Jackson finally turned the ancient key, the secret door gave way with a prolonged crack, revealing a narrow, dark corridor, perfumed by a smell of earth and dampness that seemed even more intense than anywhere else in the basement. The walls were covered in symbols that Claire recognized as attempts to mark important events, perhaps warnings to anyone who dared to investigate. Each step seemed to echo deeper into time, as if the corridor connected past and present. What they found there would change everything. It wasn't just an archive of documents or historical clues, but a space preserved for decades, almost intact, containing direct evidence of crimes and decisions that had shaped the fate of the Whitmore family. In the center of the chamber was a wooden box, reinforced with iron. Jackson hesitated for a moment. Something inside him told him that opening it would be a point of no return. When the lid lifted, he found diaries, personal belongings, and a series of letters signed by members of the Whitmore family whom no one had ever met. But what truly shocked everyone was an old photograph. It showed a man who looked exactly like Jackson, in a situation that suggested involvement in obscure events in the family's past. It was as if time had set a trap to reveal that the story he thought he knew was deeply intertwined with secrets that directly affected his own life. Shock swept through the team. Claire swallowed hard, Marcus instinctively recoiled, and Jackson felt a mixture of disbelief and fascination. The diaries detailed family rivalries, betrayals, and disappearances that had been covered up with altered official documents and manipulated testimonies. Jackson realized that not only the mansion, but he himself, was linked to events that could never be ignored. He discovered that his family had not only owned the mansion, but had been protagonists in decisions that culminated in unrecorded tragedies. This revelation put everything into perspective. Every obstacle, every strange noise, every feeling of being watched was not a coincidence. It was as if the past was reacting to the presence of someone who carried the family's blood. The mansion not only held memories, but sought to confront the living with the truth it had tried so hard to hide. The emotional tension reached its peak when Jackson found a letter addressed to him, written decades earlier by an ancestor he had never met. The letter explained that certain secrets should remain buried, but that the truth had the power to redefine destinies. The billionaire realized it wasn't just curiosity or historical interest. There were direct implications for his identity and his family's reputation. Claire and Marcus watched him in silence, understanding that Jackson's determination was now not just professional, but personal. The mansion, with its dark basement, had served its purpose: to expose, confront, and transform. Furthermore, the discovery revealed a network of secret relationships linking the Whitmore family to influential figures in local politics and commerce. Evidence showed collusion, manipulation, and the intentional disappearances of people who questioned the family's power. The revelation not only altered historical perception, but also had immediate consequences for any attempt at public restoration of the mansion. Jackson had to confront a dilemma: keep these findings secret, ensuring the continuity of the project and his reputation, or reveal the truth, facing scandals and legal repercussions. The choice he made would be decisive for the rest of the narrative. As Jackson absorbed the magnitude of the discovery, he felt the mansion's demeanor shift. Every corridor that had previously seemed silent now appeared to pulse, as if the building were aware that the truth had been revealed. Small objects fell, doors closed softly, and shadows moved in an almost ritualistic manner. The tension increased, and the characters realized that the story hadn't ended with the discovery. The second phase of the conflict had truly begun, where the past inevitably confronted the present. The mansion remained the antagonist, but now its power was intertwined with Jackson's own identity, making the challenge personal and emotional. The turning point solidified when, upon examining the final documents, Jackson discovered that a crucial event had been deliberately concealed, involving the disappearance of a Whitmore family heir that could alter the current succession and fortune. He realized that the events were not merely historical, but contained legal and financial ramifications that directly impacted his life. The surprise was total. The past not only spoke, but demanded action. Jackson Whitmore understood that the mansion, the basement, and the secrets it held had irreversibly changed the course of his personal history, establishing a new direction for the narrative and preparing the ground for unexpected consequences in the chapters to come. After the revelation in the basement, Jackson felt the weight of an unexpected responsibility. The mansion, which had previously seemed merely an architectural and historical challenge, was now transforming into a catalyst for critical decisions. Every corridor and every room carried echoes of the past, reminding Jackson that his actions could alter the fate of everyone involved. The atmosphere had become almost palpable. The dense air, the creaking of the floorboards, and the dancing shadows in the stained glass reinforced the feeling that the past had not only been discovered, but now demanded an answer. Claire reacted cautiously, understanding the gravity of the information that had emerged. She knew that divulging the secrets could generate scandals in the city and impact Jackson's reputation, but she also recognized that ignoring the truth would be morally impossible. On several occasions, her expression reflected internal conflict, the desire to protect Jackson and the safety of the team versus the obligation to honor the history of the mansion and the events that had been unjustly silenced. Her posture demonstrated that although she was not the protagonist, her ethical conscience had become an essential pillar in guiding the next step. Marcus, always pragmatic, experienced a different kind of transformation. Previously focused solely on the structural integrity of the mansion, his gaze now turned to the real and immediate risks that the discovery implied. He began to map out scenarios, possible legal confrontations, media repercussions, and the need to protect both the documents and the historical objects. Every technical decision also became a strategic one, and his role as an engineer expanded, assuming an unexpected part in protecting the historical legacy and Jackson's own safety. The tension between precaution and courage intensified, creating a delicate balance between the three protagonists. Jackson, for his part, felt the most profound transformation. His obsession with unraveling the mansion had been replaced by a broader understanding of the complexity it held. He realized he wasn't just confronting walls, doors, and old documents, but the impacts of his ancestors' decisions on the present. Every movement in the basement now required caution. Opening a door, moving an object, or registering a document could trigger unexpected legal, emotional, or even personal consequences. The feeling of being watched by his own family history intensified with each step, and the mansion seemed to respond to his emotional state, making the environment more unpredictable and intense. The ramifications of the turning point weren't limited to the main team. Henry Caldwell intensified his presence, appearing more frequently to remind Jackson of the stories the underground concealed. His warnings, previously vague, became more direct and urgent, suggesting that the truth had a price and that curiosity could unleash uncontrollable events. Caldwell functioned as a reflection of the consequences of obsession with the past. A man marked by time, unable to alter history, but determined to warn those who dared to interfere with it. At the same time, the revealed documents began to trigger external changes. Jackson received calls from former family associates, questioning the validity of the records and the fate of inherited properties. The town, previously a silent observer, now became an indirect participant in the conflict, with rumors circulating about the mansion and its discoveries. Each external reaction amplified the risk, creating almost tangible pressure on the team. The choices they would make in the coming days would be decisive in maintaining control of the narrative or allowing the chaos of the past to spread. Tensions reached a critical point when Jackson realized he needed to act quickly to protect the documents and decide what to reveal. The mansion, with its dark basement, remained a silent antagonist, but now more profound. Each wall seemed to carry judgments, each corridor recalled forgotten events, and each shadow reinforced the urgency of the decisions. Claire and Marcus's reactions intensified, alternating between support, alertness, and frustration, shaping the next step in the narrative and testing Jackson's ability to lead under emotional and moral pressure. In this context, the consequences of the turning point manifested themselves on multiple levels: psychological, ethical, and physical. The mansion continued to challenge the protagonists, and the need for balance between exploration, preservation, and protection became central. The conflict was no longer just about curiosity or historical knowledge. It was about responsibility, legacy, and survival in the face of forces beyond immediate comprehension. Each subsequent action would determine not only the outcome of the investigation, but also the very trajectory of Jackson Whitmore and all who dared to confront the secrets buried beneath. After the consequences revealed by the underground investigation, Jackson realized he needed to redefine his approach. The turning point had exposed not only the mansion's secrets, but also his own vulnerability. He began to plan each step more carefully, assessing risks and prioritizing the safety of his team and the preservation of the historical legacy. Each decision now reflected a quiet maturation. The initial obsession gave way to the understanding that courage without planning could be dangerous, and that confronting the past required more than determination. It required wisdom. Claire, observing this change, began to take a more active role. Previously cautious and often reactive, her expertise in history and ancient symbols now translated into practical leadership. She guided Jackson on the meaning of the inscriptions and documents, anticipating pitfalls and possible misinterpretations. The growing trust between them allowed for quicker and more accurate decisions, and mutual respect strengthened the group dynamic. Claire's overcoming of these challenges was not only intellectual, but also emotional. She learned to deal with fear and uncertainty calmly, transforming tension into strategy. Marcus, in turn, expanded his skills beyond engineering and maintenance. Becoming involved in the protection and cataloguing of documents and objects, he came to understand that the mansion was not merely a physical structure, but an organism of memories and events. His practical approach, previously limited to calculations and structures, now included historical and ethical sensitivity. He became a silent mediator between Jackson and Claire, balancing the obsession with truth and the caution necessary to avoid unnecessary risks. Each of Marcus's decisions reflected personal growth. He had learned to combine logic, intuition, and ethics in high-pressure situations. As they explored deeper underground, the challenges increased. Some corridors were partially collapsed, and ancient traps, designed to protect secrets, began to reveal themselves. Jackson needed to lead with intelligence and courage, applying everything he had learned in the previous weeks. The accumulated experience allowed him to predict the mansion's reactions and make decisions that avoided accidents and damage. Each successful action reinforced the team's confidence and demonstrated how the direct confrontation with the mansion's mysteries was transforming them into protagonists capable of facing the unexpected. A pivotal moment occurred when they found a door blocked by rubble and old locks. The old key didn't work. Improvisation and teamwork were necessary. Jackson led the excavation with patience and strategy. Claire identified weak points in the wood and the lock's mechanisms, while Marcus coordinated the use of tools and structural supports. The cooperation resulted in success. The door gave way, revealing a secret archive of documents and personal belongings of former residents, even more sensitive than the previous ones. The achievement not only advanced the narrative, but symbolized collective growth. Overcoming challenges depended on combining their skills and learning from each previous experience. On a personal level, Jackson began to confront his own fears and limitations. The revelation of his family connection to the events at the mansion still weighed heavily on him, but now he transformed anxiety into conscious determination. His evolution was reflected in his attitudes. He made thoughtful decisions, valued Claire and Marcus's opinions, and learned to balance emotion and reason. The mansion, once an absolute antagonist, began to be perceived as a test, a catalyst for growth that demanded not only courage, but wisdom and empathy. The discoveries also required them to confront ethical and moral dilemmas. Jackson could reveal or conceal certain information. Claire pondered preservation versus historical disclosure. Marcus assessed legal and physical risks. Each decision became an exercise in responsibility, consolidating the inner growth of each character. The time pressure continued, but now it was managed with intelligence and cooperation, showing that the team had evolved beyond simple curiosity or obedience to the initial obsession. Finally, their growth culminated in the understanding that overcoming the mansion meant not only discovering its secrets, but respecting its history and learning to live with the echoes of the past. Jackson realized that leading was not just about commanding actions, but inspiring trust, listening to advice, and acting ethically. Claire consolidated her expertise as an intellectual and emotional leader, while Marcus became the bridge between the physical and ethical worlds of the mansion, ensuring that each step was safe and meaningful. Individual overcoming became collective, and the group was ready to move towards the climax, knowing that each decision now reflected shared experience, courage, and responsibility. With the team now more united and experienced, Jackson realized that the next step would require both planning and courage. The secondary subplots, which had previously unfolded in parallel, the protection of the documents, Henry Caldwell's warnings, and the tension between curiosity and responsibility, began to converge. Every detail learned in the previous weeks needed to be applied with precision, as any mistake could compromise not only the investigation, but also everyone's safety and the integrity of the mansion. While reviewing the records found behind the secret door, Claire noticed patterns indicating previously unexplored locations underground. These additional corridors seemed to connect important historical points, each containing documents and objects that completed the story of the Whitmore family and their local influence. It was as if the underground were a map of secrets, carefully crafted for those with the patience and courage to follow its implicit instructions. The pressure mounted. Exploring each corridor meant venturing into the unknown with physical and emotional risks, but also the possibility of uncovering the whole truth. Marcus, realizing the fragility of some structures, began reinforcing critical passages while monitoring the team's every move. His expertise now went beyond engineering. He interpreted environmental signals, anticipating collapses and obstacles, and adjusting strategies in real time. Each of his decisions directly influenced the group's safety, creating a constant tension that accelerated the narrative's pace. The mansion, silent and imposing, seemed to test every step, demanding total attention and instinctive coordination among the protagonists. At the same time, Jackson faced more intense moral dilemmas. The letters and documents revealed secrets that could impact living families, local businesses, and the historical reputation of the region. He needed to decide what would be disclosed, what would be preserved, and what should remain hidden. This responsibility increased the emotional weight of the mission, making the next move crucial. Each decision regarding documents or objects reflected not only practical choices, but also ethical values and respect for the memory of those involved, creating an additional tension that brought the group closer to the narrative's climax. As they ventured through the deeper corridors, they began to notice signs of who had occupied the mansion decades before, personal objects, visitor logs, and everyday details that suggested habits, rituals, and family conflicts. These elements, previously mere curiosities, now took on a central role, directly connecting past subplots with the current investigation. Each new discovery increased the time pressure. The longer they delayed, the greater the chance of external interruptions, such as the imminent inspection by the City Hall or the leaking of rumors to the community. Henry Caldwell, increasingly present, provided crucial details about areas that should be explored with care. His warnings were precise and almost prophetic, suggesting locations that held important secrets, but also potential traps. The team understood that Caldwell was not just an outside observer, but a key piece in preparing for the final confrontation with the mansion's secrets. The emotional tension increased, confidence, fear, and determination intertwined as each step propelled the group toward the climax. To complete the preparation, Jackson decided to consolidate everything they had learned: corridor maps, records of discoveries, structural reinforcements, and coordinated action strategies. Every detail counted. Claire reviewed symbolism and historical correspondences, Marcus reinforced critical structures, and Jackson coordinated ethical and strategic decisions. The narrative pace accelerated, and the mansion seemed to recognize the team's readiness, as if the walls responded to their intentions. The moment of confrontation was approaching, but the tension still needed to be managed. Mistakes or hesitations could compromise not only the mission, but the emotional and historical outcome of the entire story. Thus, the build-up to the climax combined physical action, strategic planning, and moral tension, resolving secondary subplots and placing each character in a position of protagonism. The group, now stronger and more aware of the weight of their decisions, advanced cautiously and determinedly through the deepest corridors of the underground, each step inevitably leading them to the decisive moment when the full truth about Whitmore Manor would finally be confronted. The escalating tension, the ethical choices, and the team's unity created a narrative that not only prepared for the climax, but made it inevitable, palpable, and electrifying. The atmosphere in the Whitmore Mansion's basement was heavy. Each narrow corridor seemed more suffocating. Each shadow seemed to move with a purpose of its own. Jackson felt the weight of the moment. Everything that had happened up to that point, the discovery of the basement, the family secrets, the ethical and emotional consequences, culminated in that instant. The group was ready, but the tension was almost palpable. Each step could reveal a new threat or an even more shocking truth. Upon reaching the final door, unlike all the others, they noticed it was locked with an ancient and complex mechanism. The structure seemed designed to protect something of utmost importance. Jackson studied the mechanism, recalling all the hidden clues and instructions they had deciphered throughout the investigation. Claire, analyzing the symbols engraved on the door, identified patterns suggesting the final key was not physical but symbolic, a combination of correct decisions based on previous discoveries. Marcus assisted, adjusting the pressure on the structural supports to prevent any physical errors from causing collapses. When the mechanism gave way, the door slowly opened, revealing a spacious compartment illuminated by natural light that seemed impossible underground. Inside, they found not only historical documents, but also personal belongings that had belonged to generations of the Whitmore family. There were also detailed records of secret activities, letters, and diaries that shed new light on old decisions, revealing conspiracies, betrayals, and disappearances. But what truly shocked Jackson was the presence of a record that directly linked him to events he believed were far removed from his own history. The final revelation showed that the Whitmore family's fortune and prestige had been built, in part, at the cost of injustices committed against people he now knew still had living descendants. The conflict reached its peak when Henry Caldwell abruptly appeared, revealing that not all secrets had been uncovered and that some actions needed to be taken immediately. The moment demanded quick decisions, reveal the truth to the public and risk scandal and financial losses, or protect the family legacy by keeping certain secrets hidden. Jackson felt an inner transformation. The decision was not just about curiosity or power, but about responsibility, ethics, and courage. His immediate reaction demonstrated growth. He chose to confront the truth, understanding that the mansion demanded more than exploration. It demanded justice. While the team was cataloging the final documents, external forces began to interfere. Strange noises and minor structural flaws indicated that the mansion itself was reacting to Jackson's decision. Objects fell, doors slammed, and shadows seemed to move hastily, almost as if trying to prevent the final revelation. The physical and emotional tension reached its peak, forcing Jackson to lead with firmness, courage, and clarity. Every movement, every decision reflected the progress he had made in recent days. The final twist came when they discovered an additional secret compartment containing evidence that Jackson's identity was more deeply connected to the mansion's history than he had imagined. Records indicated that his direct ancestor had played a central role in the family's darkest events, and that the mansion functioned almost as a living testament, testing each generation until the truth was finally confronted. This discovery not only solidified the tension of the moment, but also validated all of Jackson and the team's efforts, showing that confronting the mansion and its secrets required moral courage as much as physical courage. At the climax, Jackson decided to take practical measures. He recorded the most important documents, organized evidence that needed to be released, and defined strategies to deal with external repercussions. Claire helped contextualize the historical information, ensuring that the narrative told the truth coherently, while Marcus ensured that all structures remained intact, preventing accidents that could destroy centuries of records. Each character played their role with precision, solidifying the climax as the most intense point of the narrative. When they finally emerged from the basement, the feeling of triumph was palpable. Jackson had confronted his past, made ethical decisions, and led the team through complex physical and emotional challenges. The Whitmore mansion, which until then had seemed like a living antagonist, had become a catalyst for personal and collective transformation. The final revelation not only solved the mystery, but redefined everyone's perception of legacy, responsibility, and justice. The intense action, the plausible twist, and Jackson's transformation solidified the climax, paving the way for the final consequences and the story's conclusion. As they emerged from the underground, Jackson felt a mixture of relief and responsibility. What began as an exploration of curiosity had transformed into an ethical and emotional journey, revealing long-hidden truths and forcing each team member to confront their own limits. The mansion, with its walls laden with secrets, now seemed less threatening, almost as if it recognized that the cycle of silence had been broken. Claire and Marcus accompanied Jackson to the main room, where the afternoon light illuminated every detail of the mansion with unusual softness. The documents and objects they brought from the basement were evidence of a complex past, revealing injustices, broken alliances, and decisions that shaped the Whitmore family's fortune and reputation. Each of these records had the power to alter the town's perception of local history, and the team knew they had to act responsibly. The tension that had accompanied them for weeks now transformed into focus and determination. It wasn't enough to just discover. It was necessary to preserve and contextualize the truth. Jackson gathered the team to decide the fate of the discoveries. They opted to release the most relevant documents, ensuring that the Whitmore family history was known, but preserving personal details that could harm innocent descendants. This choice reflected not only Jackson's ethical maturity, but also the collective growth of the group. Claire prepared detailed reports, contextualizing each piece of evidence historically, while Marcus organized the physical preservation of sensitive objects and structures. The mansion, a silent witness to it all, seemed finally to rest, its past carefully documented and respected. Externally, the repercussions were significant but controlled. The disclosure of the findings generated debates about the morality and responsibility of the local elite, but also brought recognition to the team for their ethics and dedication. Jackson gained respect not only for his courage, but for the way he conducted the revelations consciously and fairly. Claire consolidated her reputation as an expert in history and the interpretation of ancient documents, while Marcus became recognized not only for his technical expertise, but for his ability to handle complex situations involving ethics and security. Internally, the team reflected on the personal transformation the experience provided. Jackson learned to balance curiosity and responsibility, courage and caution, action and reflection. Claire understood the value of leadership based on knowledge and empathy, while Marcus recognized that technical practice without ethical vision was not enough in high-impact situations. Each character concluded their journey with visible growth, ready to face future challenges with the experience and wisdom gained at Whitmore Manor. In the end, the mansion, once a stage for mysteries and fears, became a symbol of overcoming, learning, and transformation. The corridors and basements that once held dark secrets now reflected the strength of courage and ethics, showing that even the darkest places can reveal truths and generate growth when faced with integrity. The conclusion, therefore, brought the central arc of the story to a satisfactory close, connecting past, present, and future, and showing that the journey of external discoveries is always linked to the internal evolution of the characters. Months after the secrets of the Whitmore mansion were revealed, Jackson continued to receive letters from descendants and historians, thanking him for his courage and historical justice. Claire dedicated herself to writing a detailed study of the documents and symbols they had deciphered, solidifying her name in the academic community. Marcus founded a program for the preservation of historical buildings, applying the experience gained at the mansion. The mansion, now partially open to the public, remained a silent symbol of the past and the truth discovered. Its corridors continued to echo memories, reminding us that each secret revealed had changed lives, and that some mysteries would always hold new enigmas. If you were surprised by the secrets of Whitmore Manor and the team's courage in confronting the past, be sure to share this story with friends and family. Comment below on which discovery you found most impactful, or if you could handle such deep and dark mysteries. Subscribe to the channel to follow new true stories, full of suspense, mystery, and surprising revelations. Your opinion and interaction help bring even more incredible content, and you become part of the community that explores the unknown along with each investigation.